Hi, I'm Adam Elder. I'm going to be making this video so anyone who wants to watch can ride along with me. I will be making a render farm based on Amazon EC2. It's a alternative to having an in-house render farm. We had one ourselves, and it got time to upgrade it, and instead of investing all the money into hardware infrastructure, having it on site, we explored the idea of building an Amazon EC2 render farm based on their AWS infrastructure. So this is going to serve as kind of a two purposes. One, so I can kind of backtrack and make sure that I'm doing everything right for future reference, but figure I'd share it, and anyone who could benefit from this, great. So let's get started. So just to go over what we're doing here, you're going to need an Amazon Web Services account. The URL is aws.amazon.com. So sign up for an account here, and you'll get access to the AWS Management Console. Let me just log in here. Okay, so don't worry about setting anything up right out the gate. Just get to the point where you see the screen. To get an idea of how much this costs, there is some is software cost and a cost related to having this on a monthly basis, even if you don't use it. So that's something to keep in mind. I built it the first time around with 5 machines, five Amazon machines, and to keep those in a state to where I could turn them on and off, it's about $15 a month for those 5. So you're looking at just a few bucks per machine per month, even if you don't turn it on. And the cost there is to store your OS image, which it will call upon when you want it and turn on your machine. For when the Amazon machines are on, there's different costs, and it's based on where you're located, or where the server is located, actually. So Amazon EC2 pricing, this fluctuates, so the prices could be different by the time you're building one. There's also other providers out there. There's Google Compute Engine, which I just recently looked into, and right now it's a limited beta, so I opted just to stay with Amazon for the time being, and that's what this video will be covering. There's other data centers that offer similar things, but their pricing might be more attractive, but you have to really look into it, make sure that you're getting the same amount of cores, what exactly the processors you'd be getting are, and I don't know if the software we're going to be using to manage it can communicate with anything outside of Amazon. I mean, it says it can, but I haven't tested it, so I'm going to be just moving forward with Amazon, and surely a lot of this will apply to whatever service provider you end up using. So looking at the prices here, you got to make sure that you're referencing Windows, because we need to actually install Cinema 4D on this server. So the Linux prices are much more attractive, but you can't run our software on that. So make sure that you're going to be using a Windows instance, and you're referencing the Windows pricing. For the purposes of render farms, we don't need high memory, really. We don't need anything except a lot of processing power, and we're going to be focusing on CPU power here. So there are GPU instances if down the road there's a GPU based renderer that you want to use, and you can get whole racks filled with GPUs to help your render go even faster. So it's a little future proof, and you can just turn that on and off or choose, I want this type of instance now, or a GPU instance, or high compute instance. For right now, we're going to be focusing on the compute optimized. I will be my core machines will be based on this C3 8 large. It's got 32 threads, so it's very much like a 32 core machine, each machine. So I will be building 5, and it looks like right now it's running at $3 an hour. So yeah, so while the machines are on in an on state, and you're rendering, it's $3 an hour per machine. So $15 an hour, it's much better than paying traditional render farm prices, which are based on gigahertz core hours. So it sounds cheap when they say, oh, it's only 4 cents per gigahertz core hour, but you add this many cores, 3-4 gigahertz each, it adds up. So this is self-managed. You can install the plugins that you want or that you use yourself. You don't need to call support and wait for them to do it if they do it, things like that. So this is all under your control for the most part, and I like it. So but having the 5 machines on for a full day ended up being around $350 in my previous test, and I believe the price during that test was higher than 3. So simple math will get you the answers that you need before you start rendering, and yeah. So moving on. Let me go over this. So there are different types of pricing for the Amazon AWS. If you do this a lot, I always stick with on-demand for the time being, but there is an option where you pay a reserved price. And what this basically means is that if you come down here, and this might be a little bit more attractive because you get if you use it a lot, because for example you would pay $2,600 up front, and then you're only charged $1.30 per hour. So if you render a lot, if you're a larger studio, or you just do a lot of 3D rendering, this actually might make more sense and be more cost effective in the long run, is getting the reserved. So you can get it for a 1-year term or a 3-year term. Oh, sorry. So the 1-year term is actually going to set you at $1.49 per hour as opposed to $3.08. It's a little bit more than less than half price. And I wouldn't do the 3-year term simply because you don't want to be stuck on this hardware. One of the beautiful things about using the Amazon AWS is that as they update their hardware and their data centers, you have the opportunity to use the latest and greatest yourself. So I would shy away from the 3-year term, but if you render a lot, the 1-year term with $2,600 up front, which is less than what you'd pay for one of those machines yourself anyway, then you could get a pretty good discount. But for me right now, I'm just going to do the straight on demand, and we're going to be focusing on these 32 thread instances. There are different regions, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. There are it's basically where your servers will be housed, and the pricing, as you can see, kind of changes as you go through the well, I'm not really seeing a change for some reason, but it was changing. There we go. Okay. So just get somewhere that's close to you, but also keep in mind, the cost associated. It might make more sense to use if you're out of the United States. Say that you're in Japan. It might make more sense for you to use servers based in United States, where apparently it's cheaper. Northern Virginia, just from dancing with it in the past, it seems that the newest hardware tends to roll out there for whatever reason first. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm based in Los Angeles, so I will be actually using the Northern California data center. All right. So the software that we will need, you'll need a Cinema 4D license server. And this is a requirement because of how you're going to have the installs over there in the cloud, and they need to make sure that you have the license. And the way that the command line renderer works, it's not a standalone license that you can install on the machine. So command line renderer licenses require license server. We happen to already use license server, so it was no problem for us. But the command line renderer, it's fairly cheap. You get I was on the wrong one. So command line renderer, I'll go into why you need this. We're not going to be using Team Render or anything like that. It could be because it doesn't work. So you're gonna need this. You get up to 100 seats for only $185 on motionmedia.com, and motionmedia.com is pretty much where I buy all my software. So they have everything that we will need for this here today. So 185 will get you up to 100 seats, which is more than enough for our purposes here. But you'll also need license server if you don't already have one. And the cost of this depends on how many licenses, Cinema 4D licenses, you're planning on getting in conjunction with it. So if you have 1 to 4 licenses that you're migrating over to license server, it's going to be $945. If you have more than that, $470. These are going to be absolutely required to move forward. So if you don't have those, or you don't, you don't believe in using a license server for whatever reason, this approach just isn't going to work. I couldn't get it to work. I tried getting Team Render functionality in there, and trust me, don't waste your time. I spent many weeks trying to get that to work. The software that we're going to be using to control the instances is ThinkBox Deadline. Their newest version it supports cloud-based instances, and it makes it really easy to submit your jobs right from Cinema. ThinkBox Deadline costs $183 per machine that you're trying to get. So we're going to be doing 5, so 183 times 5, or times however many you're going to install. And yeah, so that's all the software we're going to be using, everything that is required to get this going, and that's the upfront cost. So moving on, you can find out more information about Deadline at thinkboxsoftware.com. And this will probably be a long journey, and I'm sorry if I'm a little bit scatterbrained, and I'm going to try to edit this down to make it as easy to watch as possible for you. So let's get started. Okay, so jumping into AWS, if you pull up this page, you already signed up and everything, you will see a lot of options, Direct Connect, Root S3, VPC, Workspaces. You can ignore pretty much everything. In fact, you can ignore everything. We will only be dealing with EC2. But now that you have the account, just as a side note, Glacier is a excellent service to upload files that finished spots or finished work that you just don't want to lose ever. It's a 1 penny per gigabyte stored, so and it just keeps it somewhere forever. So it's just disaster recovery. But for the render farm, we're only going to be using EC2. So click on EC2. When you come in here, you will notice at the top right, you want to make sure that you are working within the data center of your choice. So it's probably going to be Northern California or Northern Virginia. I'm going with Northern California because I'm in Los Angeles. I don't know why I have a... Okay. So in the dashboard, you should have pretty much nothing. I'm just going through and deleting. Okay. Anyway, you should have nothing if it's a new account. So what we first need to do is just make a base machine, and we'll use a lower powered machine for all of this setup. That way you're not paying the hourly fees just for installing software, which you don't need 32 cores to do. So we're just gonna go and click this launch instance. When you first get in here, you're going to see a few options: Linux, Red Hat, all this stuff. So what we want is Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2 base. We do not need SQL Server. It has nothing to do with us, and it ends up costing more money. So you can also, if you're more comfortable with Windows 7 and under environment, you might want to opt for Windows Server 2008. It's got the start button and all that. I am a fan of Windows 8. That's what all of our machines here are on. So I'm gonna go with Server 2012. So we're gonna get the base with no SQL, 64-bit. Hit select. Alright, so in here there are multiple instance types, and this is going to be a different kind of hardware. The options of hardware you have to choose from. When we actually use the render farm, we're going to be using the C4D 8X large, the 32 core instance type. However, I'm going to save money and use this micro instance just to install the software. So it's free tier eligible. What that means is, for the first 12 months. So I probably don't qualify anymore, but you will. Following your AWS sign up date, you'll get like 750 hours of free usage. So this will be good for using just building the base OS, and once we have all of our applications installed, then we'll actually save that and attach that volume to a different type of hardware. So, and it's going to be slow. It's going to be, things could be quicker if you use a bigger instance, but let's just do it. When you're in here and you see these buttons, anytime that you're setting up an instance, the bottom right corner there will be this blue review and launch. Be wary of that button. If you hit it prematurely, it will load the rest of the configuration with a lot of default values, and it kind of clutters up everything as we go down the road and we set this up further. To keep things clean, we want to use things that maybe was already created, so just be wary of this blue button and always opt to hit this next configure instance details instead. So I'm going to click that. We're just going to use one instance because we're just installing right now. Network, we'll just leave that on default. Request spot instances, we're not going to do that because that's when there's low demand, you can get a better deal, but you can't always guarantee availability, so just stay away from that. Subnet, to be perfectly honest, I don't really know what this is. Public IP, yes, you want a public IP. IAM role, no, we're not going to do that. So none. Shutdown behavior, stop. Okay, so this is going to be important going forward. There's two types of shutdown behaviors of every instance that you launch. Remember, an instance is basically a whole computer. So there's stop and there's terminate. Terminate will actually destroy that computer and everything about it. So almost never choose terminate unless you're absolutely sure that you don't want that OS image and all your memory, all your setup that goes with it. Sometimes we will use it. For instance, right now we're working on the micro instance, the little free guy. So once we have that and we save that the setup OS to better hardware, then we'll terminate this micro instance. But for the most part, you're just going to want to use stop. So we're going to set this to stop. And what that means, and when you stop a machine, it turns it off. You're not using the hardware anymore, but Amazon is still storing the OS image somewhere. And you will be charged for that. So that's the reason why you want to terminate sometimes, is if you're not going to use that image anymore, then go ahead and delete it so you're not paying for it to be stored. Enable termination protection. It sounds like a good idea, but from the last go around, it wasn't. It's hard to accidentally do terminate. So because we will be using it, it's a little bit of a pain to go in and say and uncheck this later, so you can terminate it. I'm going to leave it open, so we just have to be careful. Monitoring, enable CloudWatch. CloudWatch is a website thing. We're not dealing with websites, so in tenancy, shared tenancy or dedicated tenancy basically just means we have are we using a whole machine or just part of it. Again, we're just setting up, so we're just going to share it. If we get the largest instance type down the road for the real render farm, I suspect this drop down won't even be here because we're using all available cores, so no one will be able to share it with us. Advanced details, user data. Amazon throughout this will offer you ways to tag your items. So I'm just going to call this install base 01. It's good just to tag things, and because down the road you'll see it gets a little messy. So any opportunity to organize a tag is a welcome one. So we're gonna hit next, add storage. So we're gonna set the size of the root, the size of your C drive, if you will. It's like the main system drive. If you had a computer, you went to the store, you bought a computer just for rendering, how big do you think that hard drive would be? You have to keep in mind that 30 gigs, Windows alone will use 30 gigs, and we have to install Cinema 4D, we have to install the libraries that we want, the plugins that we want, and we have to even include overhead for our renders. We have to include overhead for the times that we're gonna put our install ISOs over there and have the application installed. So we have to have a healthy amount. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it 100 gigs. You don't want to give it too much. I mean, I was having a little bit of a hard time with 80 before. It did fine, but I just had to be particularly clean before, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do 100. It's up to you. 80 is a fine number if you are careful. and you know how to clean a Windows system pretty well, because remember, you will be charged, even if it's off, you're going to be charged on a per gigabyte basis for your machine being off, for them to store this image as many times as you have machines, because each machine that you're going to have in an off state, let's say that you decide you want 10 Amazon render machines at your disposal, you're going to be paying the rate per machine to store it, because each machine has to have a unique machine ID in order for Deadline to work with it. Otherwise, it kind of errors out. So I'm going to go with 100. Volume type standard. There's provision IOPS or standard. We'll just use standard. And delete on termination. We're going to go ahead and do that because again, things get messy. You can terminate an instance and then your storage is still there and then you wonder where it is. So delete on termination is I'm going to check that. And encrypted, not encrypted, and that's performance reasons. We're not doing anything super top secret. No one cares that hacking our Amazon render machines in the few times that we use it. So next, tag instance, and I'm gonna make tags again. I'm gonna call it date, the key, and then the value of that key. I'm gonna put today's date. That's 6/6. I'm going to create another tag. I'm going to put install step, because it's the first time doing this. 1. And what else could we do this? We'll just leave it at that. Okay. So 6/6 install step 1 install. Okay. Next, security group. So you may have seen that I have a security group here that I can't seem to delete. Maybe you have one there for being a first time, just called default. The thing is that I was poking around with the default security group, so much so that I don't know what it is on a new account. So for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to create a new security group, as should you. So security group name, we're going to call this render security group 01. Okay, and that's a pretty good description, but yeah. So and I'm doing it 01 in case we need to make a second one for any reason, troubleshooting or So there's all these abilities to add rules, but we'll get into that later. Review and launch. So we're using the T1 micro, and yeah. Cool. 100 gigs of storage. Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and launch this. Okay, so key pairs, security key pairs. We're gonna work to get rid of these down the road because they're a little bit of a pain. But you definitely need to create one, and you need to download one every time that you make a new machine. So, or you could use an existing security pair if you want. But anyway, we're gonna create a new pair. We're gonna call this render farm key pair 01. Okay, and we're gonna download this. It's very important that you download it and you save it. Okay, so if you don't, you're gonna be locked out of the machine. You're gonna have to do this all over again. So launch instance. Alright, so you should get a confirmation. We're gonna need to hit services again, go to EC2 instances. Okay, so now it's gonna start up. So I'm gonna pause this for a bit and wait for it to initialize. There's gonna be another step we're probably gonna miss during the waiting period, and it's gonna be checked, so it'll look like it might be working, but wait until it says it's green. I think there's a check mark, and it says checks passed 2 out of 2. So we'll just sit here and wait. So I'll be right back. Okay, so it looks like it's up and running. So you can see a description of your machine here. There's a public IP. That's pretty much all we need from this area. Status checks and stuff, that's we won't get into that. Monitoring, it's, you know, if you want to kind of check out what your CPU utilization is, and yada yada. This will be more useful when you actually have the big guys rendering, and then our tags that we created. So what we need to do is, I'm on Windows, in case you haven't noticed, so this is going to be a little bit different if you're on a Mac, because we're going to use Windows Remote, which is only available on Windows Pro, I think. But there are applications on a Mac that let you remote into a Windows instance. You just have to look into those. Macs aren't my problem. So, okay, we're gonna hit connect. You can right click here and choose a few things, but you can just highlight it and hit connect. So this is why we needed the that key file that we downloaded. So we're gonna hit password, get password. If we go to our downloads, you're gonna see this guy. Let's open it up in Notepad here, or whatever your text editor of choice is, and then paste the whole thing, or you could just upload the file, and hit decrypt password, and now you have this password here. So copy that. Let's go into okay, so just in case, we have it here. So now hit download remote desktop file. We're going to open it with remote desktop. But to keep things clean, and just for sake of good practice for down the road, I'm going to save the file. And it's going to name it your public IP, but let's just go ahead and call it the render farm install base 01, because that's what we named the machine, or something very close to it. So double clicking it in Windows brings up this remote desktop connection. You're gonna get asked this, don't ask me again for connections to this computer a lot, because we're gonna be creating so many different machines throughout this setup process. But we'll just go ahead and click it just for good measure. Hit connect. We get this Windows security, so we paste that password that we just got, hit OK. Remember my credentials. That can get confused. We have just don't hit that, because we're going to change the password. We're going to change the machine. Let's not muck anything up. So we'll connect. We get this. Are you sure you want to connect? yes. Sorry, everything's opening up on the other monitor here. So now we're gonna log into this machine. If you've used anything like a remote desktop connection or TeamViewer or anything like that, it's very much the same thing. So let's open it up here. Turn on smart sizing so it fits this. My second monitor is a little bit lower than HD, so. Remember, this is a very weak machine. It's their weakest offering, so it's gonna be a little slow. So let's, I don't know if you're familiar with Windows 8, but it's not too bad. We'll just go into Windows Explorer. You're going to want to go ahead and just kind of get the OS, get the environment in a state that makes sense for you, that you like, that you're comfortable with. Now this is true for Windows Server 2012, 2008, anything like that. But my first stop anytime I build a new computer is ninite.com, ninite.com. And what this will do, let's go ahead and just turn off all this weird so what ninite.com will do is install all these wonderful applications at once, so you don't really have to worry about it. So worry about downloading from multiple places. We're gonna need a better browser than Internet Explorer, Notepad++. Let's see here. We're gonna need VLC, just in case we want to preview tests and stuff. QuickTime is going to be super important, because so you can read stuff in Cinema 4D that are QuickTime based. Let's not install any of this stuff. We'll let the software we need to install that. 7-zip is my zip program of choice, handles everything. TeamViewer, well, no. And then Dropbox, and I'll tell you why. I'm actually going. Last time I used Dropbox to sync the deadline repository, and it worked fine. It worked great. But I'm gonna try doing something a little bit slicker this time around. If you don't see me trying, it's because it didn't work, and I cut it out, and we reverted back to using Dropbox because that's what I got to work before. You can also use Google Drive or anything that any of these services that you may already have an account for. But whatever it is will need to be synced or on every, even your own workstation. So it's something to keep in mind if you're working on site as a freelancer, working for clients, or anything like that. see. Let's just go ahead and get reader, because I don't know, we might need to pull up instructions. And yeah, sounds good to me. So get installer. You're gonna have to keep hitting this add. It's a weird security thing that we will get rid of soon as this all stops. Save. Run. Okay. So now it's going to download all the applications that we chose and install them in the background. So we'll just keep doing it, I think. I skipped ahead a little bit to, you know, get past the installs and find my download links from my Cinema 4D purchase and Deadline purchase and things like that. So I was just checking my email and digging through there for the right links. So now those are downloading, and it's got some time to go. There could be some things that we could do, but with this machine being as slow as it is, you know, we're using that free tier, that micro instance, so I don't want to bog it down too much. So I'm just gonna let it go, and I'm gonna pick this back up probably tomorrow or, you know, later. So I'm just gonna let it go and be right back.